Hi, I'm glad you stopped by today, because today we're going to talk about my brand new Feinwerkbau Sport air rifle. Now this gun is absolutely gorgeous. That's the first thing you'll notice when you look at it. It's just a really sleek and pretty design. It's the successor to the original Feinwerkbau 124 Sport, which was produced back in the 70s and 80s. That gun has been renowned throughout the airgun world as one of the finest spring piston air guns that's ever been made. And this one was supposed to be the successor. And although it's an absolutely gorgeous rifle, there's so many little things that I can nitpick about this thing that I can tell you that it's not the gun that the original 124 was. It's really not. It can be. It's going to take some work on my part to put it in the place that I think a gun of this cost, of this price point, it should have been like this right from the factory, but I'm going to need to smooth it out, and I'm going to need to work on that spring buzz that it's got, because it's absolutely ridiculous. So it's a 177 caliber. It's 44.8 inches overall, which is not bad. It's about 45-inch rifle. That's a pretty maneuverable rifle if you want to carry it around in the field. It weighs exactly 8 pounds. It's advertised at 950 feet per second, and from my test, it's doing pretty close to that with 8 grain pellets. So I'd say that's a good estimation. It's a beautiful gun. We already talked about how pretty it looks. It's powerful, I can tell you that much. The trigger is exquisite, and the sights that come on this gun, if you're an open sight kind of person, you're going to absolutely love them, because they're precise, all metal, just gorgeous sights. They really put the work into putting a good set of sights on this gun. You can't complain about that at all. What you can complain about are things like this ugly trigger guard. Now you take a gun like this, it's got all these angular cuts in the breech area for the sight housing and for the pivot point right here. I really enjoy the way they did this. I think it makes it look pretty. But this angled trigger guard, I guess some people think that it matches with the lines of the gun, but I don't think so. I think it looks kind of awkward. And the fact that it's made out of plastic, to me, is the biggest no-no you could do. You take a gun in this price point and you stick a plastic trigger guard on it, shame on you, Feinwerkbau. Shame on you. You should never have done that. That's one thing I'm really not going to change, because it would take too much work and time to fabricate a trigger guard that I think would look right on this gun, so I'm just going to live with that. But I am going to change how it cocks and how it loads, well, not how it cocks and loads, but how it cocks and fires. Listen to this gun as I try to cock it. One of the first things you'll notice when you try to cock this gun is it takes more force than normal to break the action open. It doesn't take any more force than normal to cock it once it's open, but just to get it to open, it takes quite a bit more force than what you're used to or what I'm used to. I'm almost sure of it. If you tap this gun the way you tap a normal gun, it won't open. You really got to give it a whack to get it to open. Once you do, then the cocking is like normal, and it feels like about 30 pounds, I guess. But listen to it. Listen to this brand new gun that costs in excess of $500. Is that what you expect a gun in this price point to sound like when you cock it? Listen again. I don't expect that. So we're going to fix that, and we're going to fix that terrible firing cycle that it's got. We're going to drop the power a little bit. I plan on taking a coil off the spring, at least one coil, at least at first. We'll do that. I'm going to fabricate some spring guides. I have access to a lathe, although I'm not a machinist. I think I can pump out a spring guide and a top hat for it. That'll snug up that spring a little bit and cancel out some of the vibration. So that's the plan, and that's a whole nother video. But for now, let's take it outside. You'll be able to hear what it sounds like when it shoots, and you'll be able to see some of the damage that my scope mounting issue did. And I'll describe that in a little more detail when we get outside. So let's head on out. We'll do that, and then we'll come back in here and we'll wrap this up. Thanks again for watching. Okay, so we're going to take 3 shots, and I want you to listen carefully. Hopefully this mic of mine will pick up the sound of the shot. I want you to listen to how it buzzes every time it's fired. And for me, a gun of this expense, a gun that costs this much, that's really unacceptable. So we're going to do something about that later, but that's a whole nother video. Okay, so shot number 1, we'll probably shoot 3 shots. I'm not even going to put it to my shoulder because there's no sights on it. It doesn't make any sense to try to aim it. So we're just going to fire it down into the ground here. But listen to the shot. I'll put your mic right down near the stock. Maybe that'll help. Fire shot number 1. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't know if you can hear the way it sounds when I cock it, but it's got one hell of a squeak. You can hear that piston seal dragging down the chamber as it's cocked. All right, shot number 2. Listen for that buzz. Sounds like a sick duck. Hear that? So for all the quality that you see in the build, it seems to be lacking on the inside, the internals. And that is what the Feinwerkbau sounds like right from the factory. So here you can see the damage to the receiver that was done by the issue that I had with the scope. That issue was because the scope rings were moving as the gun was being fired, even though they're the rings that were designed specifically for this rifle. And the reason that they're for this rifle is if you look at these radial cutouts here, those radial cutouts are designed to engage with a cross pin that's in the rings, and that cross pin sits down in that radius and keeps the scope from moving. At least in theory, that's what it does. In my case, even though the rings were clamped down firmly, it still crept up and out of the hole and then dragged itself down the receiver. Before I realized what was happening, I ended up with this gouge in the bluing, and it's actually disformed some of the metal. So I've got a permanent scar on my otherwise pristine rifle. Some people on some of the forums looked at the way I had the ring set up, and they suggested that I possibly had one of the clamps reversed on the ring. I checked that, and it looks like they may have been correct. However, I reversed that clamp and put it back into the receiver of the gun, and noticed that the pin still does not engage to the bottom of the radius, and the chances of it happening again, even with the clamp reversed, are very good. I think it would have happened either way. Anyway, I've got a new set of mounts that arrived a couple of days ago. We're going to put those on. We're going to lighten up the scope. Instead of using a 25-ounce scope, which is what was on here before, I'm going to be using a scope that weighs around, I think it's 15 ounces, so that should reduce some of the stress and maybe keep that thing in place. Anyway, that's a look at the Feinwerkbau Sport air rifle. This is the new model. Fairly new model. It's been out for a few years now. I just want you to look at some of the beautiful features of the gun. For instance, the fish scale type checkering looks very pretty. Rubber recoil pad. We've got the all-metal trigger enclosed in the what I think is a hideous looking plastic trigger guard. That's a big downside to the way this gun looks, I think. Everything else, especially this area here where you have the sight cut out, which is angular, and the pivot point for the barrel is also angular. Really pretty, nice idea there. And there's no sights on the gun right now. I took them off because I plan on scoping this gun, and that's a whole nother story that we'll discuss a little later in the video. But this is your Feinwerkbau Sport air rifle. Check out that checkering. Absolutely gorgeous. All right. Okay, so that's the Feinwerkbau Sport. What do you think? You think I can put up with all these little nitpicky things and make a pretty gun out of it? Because I do. I think it's worth the extra effort. but I also think that all that extra effort should have been put in at the factory, especially when you're going to charge the prices that they charge for one of these rifles. This rifle, when it hit the scene, was going for over $800. $800 for this. If I bought this gun and I spent that much on it, I think I'd be furious that just because you can't charge that kind of money and then deliver a product that has so many little shortcomings. So we'll fix it. We're going to do another video. Once I take the gun apart, I'll show you what the internals look like, and I'll show you what the new guide and new top hat look like, and we'll maybe I'll put it together with you so that you can see the assembly process. We'll see about that. But at any rate, just to wrap this up, you got a beautiful gun and a good weight with a good length with extreme power, which I mean, I want to bring it down to about 12 foot-pounds. But right now it's shooting at about 15 and a half, which is, that's good power for a spring piston air rifle. But we're going to knock it back a little bit and try to quiet the gun down and just make it a little nicer. So what do you think? You going to buy one? Not unless you're willing to put some work into it, I'll bet. Or unless you can put up with a gun that buzzes like a bee. So anyway, I'm glad you stopped in today. I'm glad you took time to watch this video, and stick around for more to come. Thanks again. Have a great day.